We're going to talk a little bit about the Kids Online Safety Act that is rolling through Congress right now. We got Robert Winterton, who's the Director of Public Affairs at NetChoice. Robert, how you doing?
Great. Thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, thanks for being on. So let's talk. I guess let's do this in two steps here. Let's talk one about what KOSA is, and then we'll kind of talk about. I know NetChoice is not particularly fond of it. So let's talk about what it is, and then we'll talk about the objections to it.
Sure, absolutely. So, KOSA, or the Kids Online Safety Act, is a proposal that's been debated up in Washington for quite some time. And it basically is predicated on the concern that many have about minors, teens, and their social media usage, and basically asks the Federal Trade Commission to help manage what content is and is not appropriate for minors to see online, and also is looking to try and force social media sites to verify ages of users, play a role in helping ensure that minors are not seeing content that the FTC doesn't want them to. And it really represents a different approach than the United States has traditionally had with media, where it has the federal government playing a large role in how social media is disseminated throughout society, and how it's viewed by all Americans and teens as well.
Yeah, I got two kids. Thankfully, they're not. The oldest is 10, so we're not to the social media phase yet. But you see a lot going on in other countries that are trying to get a handle on this. And I think I love when I see people online yelling about First Amendment rights. First Amendment rights on, well, these social media companies are privately owned. The only thing the First Amendment protects you from is the federal government and state governments. So obviously there's some issues in there when it comes to exactly what the government's reach is into these things. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what NetChoice's issues are with the with the bill as it's kind of currently progressing?
Sure. So, jumping straight in, we see it as yet another one of these laws that is named in a way to suggest that it's doing something that surely none of us could disagree with, right? It's about keeping kids safe on the internet. But just because it's called that, that doesn't mean that's what the bill is actually going to do. Our fundamental concern with it is the unintended consequences that come from expanding government power over access to free speech in the way that KOSA enables. Not only does it produce a lot of free speech concerns, but it produces major cybersecurity concerns for all users of social media. For a company, a social media company, to verify the age of their users so they know who is above 18, who's under 18, who should and should not be on the service, they're going to require more than you just typing in your date of birth, right? They're going to have to require, given that they'll be legally liable for this sort of thing, they're going to have to require things like a government ID, maybe your driving license or passport, maybe your social security number, or photos or images of yourself or your family, to be able to communicate that certainty that you're the age that you say you are. And that turns these sites into honeypots for hackers. It means that they have huge amounts of deeply personal information, far more than they would right now. That's just great for online criminals, right? Who want to be able to, go after one big company and be able to get all of that private information to be able to exploit Americans when they're using the internet. And it's really just not acceptable at a time where, we're seeing more hacks than ever. And if the government's going to be acting when it comes to internet policy, one thing they definitely need to be doing is improving, not destroying, the cybersecurity of American families.
Here in Kentucky, we just passed a law that took effect in July. That's you've seen in a couple of different states requiring age verification for adult websites, and that was my problem with it. Is that, oh well, we don't worry, we have a thing in the law that there's a fine if you keep the information for longer than 48 hours. I thought, well, that's great, except for what if you're going to a porno website that's based in Hungary or, God forbid, Russia? This seems to be the same situation. All right, great. Russia's going to set up some sort of Facebook clone and make you age verify, and now all of a sudden the Russian hackers all have all your info. Yeah, it's forcing you to give entities that you don't know where the information is going, much less how secure their servers and protecting your information are. The government forcing you to do that just seems kind of ludicrous.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think everything you bring up there is particularly valid, but here's why I think something like KOSA is even more concerning. And that's because unlike pornography, which has for a long time in the United States been considered a specific type of speech, right? Like minors, for example, do not have a legal right to access it and shouldn't. But we're talking as well about legal speech here. KOSA is about getting, about moderating the access to legal speech, which, when we hear about debates over, what's hate speech, is that really free speech, those sorts of things going on in politics. And we hear a lot of concerning stuff that seems to suggest that people think we should be regulating speech heavily in America, which we absolutely should not. And the issue with KOSA is that it gives the government that power, right? It gives them the power to say, we think that this sort of speech is offensive. Maybe it's religious speech that they think would be harmful for some reason to someone under the age of 18. And that's why setting a precedent and getting the government involved in this arena is quite so dangerous. This isn't like the comparisons that people make to products, right? You need to show your ID to get something like cigarettes. Cigarettes are a product, they're chemicals, they actually cause physical harm to the body. We know that. Social media is a collection of online speech. So making that like logical jump, right, from saying, okay, this is like products that we age gate and we need to be putting a lot more government involvement here. You're saying that the government should be treating speech like it treats harmful chemicals. And we all know where that goes. That means we're going to end up with speech regimes that look like, at best, something in the European Union or Brazil. Brazil just banned X for allegedly allowing misinformation. Great example of how this can go badly. But at worst, this sets up kind of a Chinese-style internet where the government is playing a really big role in what media Americans are allowed to consume. And that's just something that really should concern all of us.
We're talking to Robert Winterton from NetChoice, Director of Public Affairs at NetChoice. Yeah, I have a real problem. If I own a social media network and I decide, well, I don't want this, that, or the other on the platform, guess what? I'm a private entity. I can do what I want. I don't have to let you on my platform. But the government coming in and dictating those terms, that's a totally different story. That's
absolutely.
Like I said, the First Amendment doesn't protect you from anyone else. The First Amendment protects you from the government. And go ahead.
If I may, I think you're totally right. And part of the debate that some of the other side on this are really ignoring is the free speech right of parents to determine what media is consumed and how that media and speech is consumed in their families. Getting the government involved, calling these shots, deciding what is offensive speech and not only does it undermine our broad principles to do with free speech in America, but also parental rights. This is an area where it is the parent that can make the difference. And does that mean that we could do more to support parents, either as the tech industry or just as America, do more to support parents getting aware and educated and empowered on how to navigate the online space, how to keep their teens safe when using things like social media? Of course, but that is radically different to what KOSA is suggesting. KOSA is not about empowering parental rights. It's about replacing them with government authority.
Yeah, like I said, I've got a 10-year-old and an almost 8-year-old, and even at their age, they're not on social media. They love to come home from school and watch YouTube videos of Minecraft people and walkthroughs for Zelda games and stuff. But we as involved parents, we keep an eye on what they're watching. And there's been times I had to come and say, that's not really appropriate for you to watch, buddy. And I feel like the parents need to have skin in the game here, and the government can't come in and try to replace that. Now, is there potential downfall for us as a country and society for the parents not doing their job? Absolutely, but that's not the government's place to step in and do that job. That's up to the parents. Every parent needs to be responsible with their kids to make sure that they know how to keep themselves safe online, and that the parents know what the kids are looking at and that they're not looking at something inappropriate.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. At the end of the day, it's not the government's place, not only because we have important considerations for free speech and parental rights in America, but it's also because they can't make that difference. We know that the government cannot be a better parent than parents themselves. And therefore, any approach to this broader problem about concerns with how minors and teens are using internet services needs to be led with parental autonomy and parental leadership. It's not going to be fixed by some DC-based bureaucrats choosing what minors can see.
Absolutely. If people want to get involved, they want to speak out to their members of Congress, if they want to get more information on what's going on, what's a good way that people can get information or get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is netchoice.org, and we're also pretty prominent and loud on social media, especially X, formerly Twitter. Given that the markup was today, there was actually a lot of discussion about KOSA on Twitter today. So I would encourage your listeners to go check some of that out and take a look at our resources to show why this is really such a bad idea.
All right. Well, Robert Winterton, Director of Public Affairs at NetChoice, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
You too. You're listening to Trey Watson sitting in for Cruiser on Newstalk 590 WVLK.